On my 65th birthday, I sat by the window, waiting for my daughter's call. A few words. "Dad, we'll visit." Or at least a card. Instead, my phone buzzed and one short message lit up the screen. "Happy birthday." "Don't expect money." I read it several times, unable to believe my eyes. My hands trembled, not from age but from betrayal. Everything I had, I gave for her future. Extra shifts at the factory, nights bent over machines, savings hidden in old envelopes, all so she could have more than I ever did. And now, 3 words, typed in haste. I smiled. For the first time in years, I understood. The game had only just begun. My name is Mark Collins, and I am 65 years old. I live in the mill house I restored one paycheck at a time, with an orchard behind it that has kept my hands honest and my back straight. I learned early that a man is measured by what he builds and what he tends, not by what he boasts. For 40 years I worked machines that hummed and shuddered until the floor shook, came home with oil on my knuckles, and tucked cash into plain envelopes labeled with careful pencil: mortgage, Lydia's school, rainy days. I am not romantic about work. Work is what you do so your child can choose a different life and not apologize for it. Before she met him, Lydia and I held a world between us that felt small and good. She did her homework at the kitchen table while I mended fence posts, and I would look up to see her tongue caught between her teeth, concentrating, the way her mother used to when she threaded a needle. On Saturdays, we climbed the ladder in the orchard and filled a basket with apples until our arms ached. We ate peanut butter sandwiches on the porch steps, and she told me everything, as if secrets were just another kind of air. When the science fair ribbon came, we pressed it into the family Bible. When she cried over the first boy who did not call, I made hot chocolate and told her there are men who count minutes and men who count blessings. She grew up believing I was the second kind. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. College came close enough to drive, but far enough to feel brave. I paid what her scholarships did not. Clocked overtime until the numbers were sure. Then Gavin stepped into our story with a handshake that felt too practiced and a smile that asked for applause. He had talk about investors and markets, a hunger for more of everything, and a way of looking at my house like it was a balance sheet. The first time he stood in my kitchen, he ran a finger along the window frame and said a remodel would add value. I saw Lydia watch him as if he were a ladder to a higher branch. I wanted to be happy for her. I tried. After the wedding, the calls began to sound different. Not the old kind. "Dad, do you have time to look at my tire?" But the new kind. "Dad, this month was tight. Just a bridge until the next check clears." I put every promise on paper, not because I wanted to trap them, but because good fences keep good neighbors, and good notes keep good families. I kept the signatures in a tin box beside the ledgers and told myself it was temporary, that new ventures wobble before they stand. Then Sophie was born, and for a while the light came back. She pressed daisies into my palm and drew our big tree with crayons, and I remembered why I had bent myself over machines all those years. It did not last. Gavin talked about leverage and liquidity, about making my land work for us, as if the orchard had not already worked for 3 generations. Lydia, who once loved the quiet of harvest season, began to talk about listings and condos and how easier would be better. Visits grew shorter and came with spreadsheets. My questions were answered with jargon that circled the truth without landing on it. I watched their eyes follow the lines of my property and knew they were seeing not rows of trees, but rows of zeros. It hurt in a way I did not say out loud. Still, I am not a man who confuses softness with surrender. I keep receipts. I keep my mind clear. I prune what needs pruning. I have learned to separate love from gullibility, the way a good blade separates a clean graft from dead wood. All of that is why, when the message came on my birthday and tried to turn years of sacrifice into a balance due, I did not crumble. I smiled because I finally understood the game we were playing and how it would end. By the time the sun slipped behind the maple out front, I had already made 2 calls. one to my lawyer, the other to the county land trust. When you grow old, they assume you grow soft. I had not. I had an orchard, a paid-off mill house, a stack of promissory notes my daughter once called little formalities, and a granddaughter who still pressed daisies into my palm and called me grandpa like it meant something. With the lawyer, I set things in motion. With the land trust, I put lines on a map that would outlast talk. Then I gathered my papers, locked my accounts, and breathed. That evening I walked the rows and laid a hand on the big tree, the one that has listened to us for years. The bell we hung there once chimed in the wind, faint and steady. I went back inside and set my tools in order. Some tools are for wood, some are for paper. 2 nights later I stood at my sink when a small knock tapped the back door. Sophie, 9, braid crooked, slipped in like a moth chasing light. "Grandpa," she whispered, "Mom says we're selling the apple trees." "They'll put houses here." I dried my hands and crouched so we were eye to eye. "Thank you for telling me, Peanut," I said. "That is not for you to worry about." "I brought your present early," she said, pulling out a folded card. Inside was a crayon drawing, our old ladder, me at the top, her at the bottom catching apples in her hoodie. In crooked letters, she had written, "Do not cut the big tree." I smoothed the page with my thumb. "Do not worry," I said, kissing her crown. "The big tree stays." After she left, I pinned the drawing on the fridge and finished the calls I had started. They thought an old man fought with stories and sentiment. I would answer with records and resolve, and with a promise made to a child and kept. I started with the house. I took the spare key from under the stone frog where it had lived for 20 years and dropped it into the coffee can of bolts in the shed. I changed the deadbolt, scrubbed my name off any old envelopes by the phone, and boxed up the papers that mattered: birth certificates, photographs, ledgers, the signed promises they called little formalities. One set went into the fireproof box. Another went somewhere they could not find. I wrote the date on the spine of a plain notebook and began a clean log. Who said what? Who came by? What they wanted. It steadied me to see the day in ink. Then I walked the fence line. I tightened 2 sagging wires and righted a post that had leaned all winter. I moved the ladder from the big tree and chained it in the shed. No one would climb what they did not respect. I replaced the bulb in the motion light over the back door and set an old radio near the porch to click on at dusk, the way I used to when my wife was here and I was on nights. I hung a wooden sign at the corner by the gravel turn-in with a message simple enough for anyone to read. Not for sale. I propped a second hand-lettered sign with the same words in the front window. I made the kind of rounds you make when you mean to be taken seriously without making a scene. I carried a jar of applesauce to Earl and May next door and asked them to call me if they saw strangers with measuring wheels or cameras taking pictures of the property line. Earl laughed and said he would call before they crossed the ditch. May patted my hand and told me she was tired of seeing good land torn like bread. I left them with another jar and felt less alone than I had the night before. Back in the kitchen, I cleared the sewing table and polished the nicks she left in the wood. I set a small tin there for Sophie, 2 apple seeds, the tiny bell from the big tree, and a note in block letters she could read without squinting. "This is yours to keep safe. Ring when you need me." Then I wrote her a longer letter that said what children should hear from the adults who love them most. None of this is your fault. You do not have to choose sides, and the trees will be waiting for you in every season. I cooked as if for company, even though the house was quiet. A roast in the oven, carrots set aside the way Sophie likes them, a clean dish towel folded over the back of her chair. I laid out 3 plates and left an empty place for the one who will not be invited but always shows up, the past. Beside Lydia's glass, I placed a thick envelope of signed promises and a smaller one that held the drawing Sophie gave me. I wrote 1 sentence on a scrap of paper and slid it under my plate so I would not forget it when their voices rose. I will not raise mine. When the timer rang, I turned off the oven and stood at the window. The maple out front had gone dark against the last band of light. I could see the shape of the big tree beyond it, steady as a lighthouse. I was not waiting anymore. I was ready. Suddenly gravel popped under tires, then doors thudded. The old key scraped at the front lock and stopped. Deadbolt changed. Knuckles rapped fast and impatient. When I opened, Lydia brushed past me like a draft, Gavin on her heels, and a man I did not know carrying a clipboard and a little red laser that painted neat dots on my walls. "You changed the lock," Lydia said, not as a question. "I did," I said. "This is Nate," Gavin said, waving the man forward. "He's doing a quick walkthrough for options." Nate didn't look at me. He clicked the laser at the ceiling, then toward the hallway. Lydia followed him, already naming rooms like items on a list. Dining, primary, bonus space if we take out that wall. My not for sale sign tilted in the window, and no one saw it. They moved through the house like rain through a leaking roof, everywhere at once. Cabinet doors opened and shut, closet lights snapped on. Someone stretched a tape measure across the mantel my wife and I sanded by hand. Gavin lifted the lid on the roast, sniffed, and set it back with a wrinkle of his nose. "We'll need all your paperwork, Mark," Lydia called from the hall, using my name the way people do when they want to feel taller. "Insurance, bank stuff, warranties, whatever. And the spare keys. We should get a cleaner in this week. Stager next. We can have photos up by Sunday." "Dad works," I said, but it sounded like it had fallen down a well. Gavin opened the back door and stepped onto the porch. "Great light out here," he said. "Golden hour over the trees. Nate, grab a few shots so we can build a mood board." "In the kitchen, there's a notebook," Lydia went on. "We'll take it. Mom kept everything in one place. You should have kept that up." I slid the notebook into my pocket. "I do." Nate's laser beeped in Sophie's room, and he peeked into the tin I had set on the sewing table without touching it. Inside were 2 apple seeds, the little bell, and my note for her. He lifted his head toward Gavin. "Some personal stuff here," he said. "We can box it for donation." "No," I said, nothing more, and stood in the doorway until he drifted away. Lydia came back with her hair tucked behind one ear, the way she does when she is calculating. "If we clear out most of this, it will show better. New paint, light floors, open shelves. People love minimal people," I said. "Which ones?" "The ones who will be paying," she answered, and smiled without looking at me. I set a plate on the table for her, another for Gavin. "Sit," I said. "Eat. Talk." She glanced at the plates like they were props. "We cannot. We're meeting someone about, well, anyway." Her eyes flicked to the fridge. Sophie's drawing was right there under the magnet. "You should take that down," she said. "It makes the kitchen look cluttered." "She asked me not to cut the big tree," I said. "We can plant one by the parking area in the new place," Gavin said. "Dwarf variety. Lower maintenance." The word "new place" drifted in the room like a bad smell. Lydia leaned against the counter and started listing things out loud to no one in particular. Lamps, mismatched. Curtains dated. The chairs can go. The boxes. What are in the boxes? Jewelry? "We'll need a list. They're photos," I said. "And the ledgers." She nodded absently, like someone checking off a chore. "Right. We'll digitize. Paper is messy." They did not see the roast. They did not see the nick in the table her mother made on a Sunday in June, or the small dent in the baseboard where Sophie's scooter had kissed the wall last year. They did not see me. When they spoke about moving, they spoke about my body as if it were a piece of furniture that needed to be relocated. "He'll be happier with amenities," Gavin said. "He'll be fine," Lydia echoed, like fine was a place you could mail a person. I wrote the time and their names in my notebook. I drew a square where Nate had stood, another where Lydia had pointed, small marks to remind me later how quickly they had mapped a life for parts. I pressed my palm to the fridge until the cold came through the metal and settled my temper. At the door, Gavin dangled his hand. "Spare key?" "I do not have a spare," I said. He frowned. "That's not safe." "I agree," I said, and closed my hand around the bell in my pocket. It was warm from my skin, from the walk in the rose the night before. I imagined its ring cutting through voices, drawing a child to the porch, drawing a man to his feet. They left the way they came, talking over each other, already planning the next visit. On the porch, Lydia paused, glanced back at me, and looked through me like glass. "Try not to make this harder than it has to be, Mark," she said. "I will not," I said. When the door shut, the house exhaled. I reset the roast lid, straightened Sophie's drawing on the fridge, and took the plates back to the cabinet. Then I sat and copied one sentence onto the first page of the notebook, neat and slow, so it would hold. "They do not see me as a man." And below it, I added another. "That is how they will lose." I kept turning the message over like a coin with a strange face. "Happy birthday. Don't expect money." 3 sentences if you count the period as a blade. I did not ask for money. I did not hint. I baked a roast and set 3 plates. Still, there it is. Don't expect. Like a door slam before I even stepped onto the porch. Happy. A polite tap at the front of a shove. Birthday. A reminder of the number they think weakens me. Don't expect. A command dressed up as advice. Money. As if that is all I could possibly be after. As if the years of overtime and envelopes and apple seasons were merely a long, awkward ask. How neatly it shrinks a man. Father into debtor, home into asset, love into leverage. Maybe Gavin typed it on her phone while she buckled Sophie into the car. Maybe Lydia typed it herself, hands shaking, hearing his words in her head and choosing them anyway, because choosing otherwise is harder. Maybe they rehearsed it. Say happy first, so he cannot call you cruel. Say, don't expect, so you can call him demanding if he answers back. Maybe that little line was not a message at all, but a trial balloon. Will he fold if we make him feel needy? I was not needy when I worked nights and held a flashlight for a foreman who forgot my name. I am not needy now. Tired is not needy. Old is not needy. The message reads like a confession, if I am honest. They counted on me expecting less from them than I have always given. They counted on me expecting less of myself than I still can do. So I asked the message questions it did not mean to answer. Don't expect money. From whom? From the daughter who called a loan a gift once the ink dried? From the husband who sees my land like a rack of knives to be priced and sold? Don't expect. What else? Respect? Visits without an angle? The decency to leave a child out of adult greed? Good. I will not expect those things. I will require them. What I will expect is simple and mine to make. That the big tree still stands. That Sophie knows at least one adult who means yes when he says yes and no when he says no. That a promise once signed is a road you walk, not a suggestion you forget. I will expect that if a sign appears in my ditch, it will end up in my shed with the other bones I do not owe an explanation for. I will expect my own voice to stay low and steady, my hands clean, my notes neat, my back unbent. For hope, I do not look at their calendars. I look at my kitchen magnet holding a crayon drawing flat. I look at the bell in my pocket and feel the small, certain weight of it against my thigh. I look at Earl's porch light across the hedgerow and remember that some neighbors still wave first. I look at the rows and see work that answers to weather and time, not to men who speak in slogans. Hope, I am learning, is not a feeling. It is a schedule. Up at dawn. Walk the fence. Count what is mine. Guard what is hers. Drive is a simpler thing. It is the old habit of machines. Keep your fingers. Keep your rhythm. Shut it down before you fix it. It is writing the day's facts in the notebook and leaving out the speeches. It is laying 2 plates when they come and clearing them when they do not sit. It is putting my body between a hand and a child's drawing, because that, too, is a kind of line on a map. If their 3 words were meant to make me smaller, mine will make me exact. Not for sale. Keep records. Protect Sophie. Teach her how to graft in spring. Teach her the names of the trees her mother forgot. Show her that pruning is not anger. It is care. Show her that when adults say, "We're helping," and start counting your rooms, you ask who "we" is and what help costs. Justice, for people like us, is not a speech in a marble room. It is a refusal repeated until it becomes a fact. It is a door relocked, a sign removed, a debt honored, a child unburdened. It is making sure that when my granddaughter remembers this season, she remembers not the men with measuring tapes, but the day she caught an apple in her hoodie, and we laughed because it did not bruise. So I let the message sit where it belongs, not as an order, but as a marker. That is how far they were willing to go. Here is how far I will go. If they want a game, they can have one. The rules are simple and written where anyone can read them. The tree stays, the land stays, the man stays, and the greedy do not get to call themselves family just because they learned my phone number. I made my decision. My revenge is near. When it lands, the orchard will have only one harvest left: their greed. I cleared the table and laid out the numbers. $7,400 to cover their mortgage. $11,200 for Lydia's tuition shortfall, so Sophie kept her seat. $2,100 for the air conditioner that summer she could not sleep. $8,000 to bridge Gavin's payroll. Total, $28,700 in documented loans. Beside that, I wrote the 5th figure no one asked for, but someone took anyway. $6,000 in appliances charged to my name. I photographed each note and receipt, printed the copies, and logged them with dates. I opened a fresh notebook. 1 page per transaction, 1 page per visit, 1 page for anything that touches my house or land. Times, names, license plates, and what was said. Nothing flowery, just facts. I boxed the originals and put them in the fireproof safe. Copies went to a folder in the shed and a small lockbox I'll store off-site tomorrow. If anyone asks me what happened, I will not be guessing. I set up 3 simple budgets. Orchard, fuel, parts, and maintenance to keep this place running without delay. Sophie, a fund for her needs. I can meet directly. No middlemen, no strings. Winter, my reserve for bills and emergencies, because I will not be cornered. I put cash in each and wrote the balances on the inside cover of the notebook. This is not theater. This is control. I called the people who matter. Earl next door will ring me if he sees survey crews or cameras. The pastor knows I will be at church Sunday and why. Alvarez is expecting a packet from me, but I am not talking strategy with anyone over the phone. I also called the non-emergency line to confirm what I already know. If another fraudulent charge appears, I file immediately. I walked the property with my phone and took date-stamped photos: ditches, fence lines, the lane, the big tree, the spots where flags and signs showed up. I printed the set and marked a map with where I found each thing. I moved the ladder to the shed and locked it. I set the motion lights, checked the doors, and put the spare keys where they are not obvious. If they treat me like an obstacle, they will find I am not easy to move. I thought about legacy while I worked, not as a speech, but as a list I can enforce. The land stays intact. The child is protected. The debts are repaid. The theft is addressed. I gave nearly $30,000 to help them stand on their own feet, and they answered by treating me like a wallet and my home like inventory. That ends now. As I said, my revenge is near. It will be dates, documents, and a record they cannot talk over. Sunday came with the kind of cold that makes wood talk. I was up before the sun, coffee in a thermos, notebook in my jacket. At church I sat in my usual spot, 4th pew on the left, where the floorboard dips. People nodded the way farmers do. Chin, eyes, no fuss. After the hymn, Pastor Green asked if anyone had words. I stood and kept it plain. "I'm not selling," I said. "If you see cars slowing by the fence or a drone over the orchard, call me first. If you see a sign in the ditch, it isn't mine." That was it. No speech. But on the way out, hands gripped my shoulder, quiet and firm. May pressed a folded index card into my palm. 2 license plates she'd seen at dawn. Earl told me the white SUV came back at midnight and idled with its lights off. In the parking lot, Gavin waited by Lydia's car, shining as if church were a lobby. 2 men I didn't know stood with him, one in a vest too tight across the chest, the other with soft shoes that never saw a gravel drive. "Mark," Gavin said brightly, like everything had been a misunderstanding. "We brought the folks I mentioned. They'd like a quick look, 5 minutes tops." "Not today," I said, and sipped my coffee. Lydia stared past me the way people do when they're trying not to see a person. "You're being difficult," she said quietly. "We're offering you something better." "Better for who?" I asked. She did not answer. I left them in the parking lot and drove home slow. The maple out front flashed red in the wind like it was signaling planes, and for a second it struck me. 3 words from a phone had turned my life into a parade of strangers with clipboards and plans. Before lunch, I stopped at Sophie's school with a bag of apple slices and cheddar. She ran across the cafeteria like a puppy, hair sticking out of her braid, elbows everywhere. We sat at a too-small table and ate in easy bites. "Mom says we're moving," she said, mouth full, "to a place where the elevator talks." "Do elevators talk?" "Some do," I said. "They say what floor you're on." She frowned at her slice. "Trees don't have floors." Then, without bravado, she added, "I told them we can visit places with elevators." "We don't have to live in one." I nodded. That is good thinking. I did not tell her the rest, that the people pushing hardest for that elevator had already spent money they did not have and were ready to spend mine. A bell rang. She stuffed the last slice into her hoodie pocket and hugged me so hard my hat shifted. Back at the house, a gray sedan sat at the turn-in, a woman idling with her blinker on. When I slowed, she rolled down her window. "Is the open house at 2?" she asked. "There's no open house," I said. "Not today, not ever." Her smile stiffened. "The agent said." "The agent is wrong." She drove off, offended that reality had not matched her calendar. I stood there until the dust settled, then walked the ditch and found a 3rd sign laid flat in the weeds, ready to go up when no one was looking. I tucked it under my arm and carried it to the shed, where the others lay crossed like old boards. The pile was getting taller. I was stacking wood on the porch when a van came fast and stopped crooked, half on the grass. 3 people stepped out with plastic bins and the smell of lemon. The same stagers as before, now with matching shirts. "We're here for the kitchen and living," the lead woman said, not quite looking at me. "We'll be quick." "You're not," I said. "Turn around." "We have authorization," she insisted, holding up a printed email like a badge. I didn't take it. I pointed to the "Not for Sale" sign I'd planted by the step and to the brass number screwed into the siding that says exactly whose house this is. She wavered then, the way people do when someone refuses to play along. "We'll bill for the slot," she said. "Bill the man who booked you," I said. "He knows my number." They packed in silence and drove off slower than they'd arrived. At 2, a realtor I'd never met tried the front door and found it locked. She knocked with her business card, a rhythm that said she had somewhere else to be. When I opened, she smiled with her mouth, not her eyes. "Quick valuation," she chirped. "Just comps and photos." "Comps for what?" I asked. "For the listing, of course." "There is no listing," I said, "and there will be no photos." "This is my home." I held the door and waited. Finally, she tucked a brochure into my hand as if that settled it. As she walked away, she raised her phone and snapped 3 shots over her shoulder. I stepped onto the porch. "Delete them," I said, steady. She shrugged. "Public view." "My porch is not public," I said. "And my patience isn't either." She left. I wrote the time and her plate in my notebook and added a line I hadn't needed to write in years. "Call the sheriff if they come again without asking." Not to make a scene, just so there's a record that isn't only mine. Near dusk, Lydia texted, "We are under a lot of stress. Stop making this harder. You'll thank us later." The tone was familiar, the voice of someone standing on a rug they've already pulled and pretending the floor is steady. I typed and erased 3 drafts, then kept it to 1 sentence. "Return what you owe and stop sending people to my door." Minutes later, Gavin called. He didn't say hello. "You like numbers?" he said. "Here's one. We're down a deposit because you're dragging your feet." Another number. "Market shifts in weeks, not months. You're going to regret this." "I regret only one thing," I said. "Teaching you I would always say yes." He exhaled through his nose, something close to a laugh. "You're not the only stakeholder." "You are confusing me with an asset," I said. Silence. Then the line went dead. At dark, a cruiser rolled slow past the orchard and stopped by my drive. Deputy Harlan stepped out, raincoat zipped to his chin. "Evening, Mr. Collins," he said. "We got a complaint about a dispute over a sign." "Not a dispute," I said, and showed him the photo of Gavin planting it in the rain, and the 3 signs stacked in my shed. He shook his head, the way men do when the math is simple but the people aren't. "I'll file a note," he said. "Call if they come back after dark. Don't go out to meet folks alone if you don't have to." "Appreciate you," I said, and meant it. Inside, I put on a pot of stew for tomorrow and set aside a scoop of carrots the way Sophie likes. I pulled the envelopes from the drawer, Orchard, Sophie, Winter, and added to each. It felt less like plotting and more like sandbagging before a flood. Not dramatic, necessary. I laid the 4 loan notes on the table and read them in order, not to rile myself up, but to remember the truth of the story my daughter is trying not to say out loud. I helped because I am a father. They took because it was easy. Now that it is not easy, they are angry. I folded the notes back into the envelope and slid it beneath the ledger. The ledger isn't a weapon. It's a mirror. At 9, the phone buzzed again. A different number. The message was a photo. A glossy condo lobby with a glass bowl of green apples on the counter and a caption, "This could be yours." I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I replied with a photo of the big tree in the dark, only the outline visible against the sky, and wrote, "This already is." I set my alarm for early. Tomorrow I would make 3 stops before work. The bank to confirm the freeze, Alvarez's office to drop the packet, and the county office to file what needed filing, so strangers with cameras would learn to drive past without stopping. Not to stage a show, to end one. Before bed, I stood at the window and let the house go quiet around me. In the glass, I saw a man who looks like the men who raised me. Tired, yes. Stubborn, yes. Still standing. 3 words tried to turn me into a problem to be managed. My answer would be longer, duller, and harder to ignore. Dates, files, faces I trust, doors that lock, neighbors who wave, a child who knows which adult kept his word. I turned off the lamp. Out back, the orchard breathed in the dark. Somewhere a bell would ring if it needed to, and if it did, I would hear it. Morning started with the bank. June at the window knows me by my coffee thermos and my habit of counting bills twice. She leaned in and lowered her voice. "We flagged an attempt to add an authorized user to your checking on Friday," she said, tapping her screen. "Request came by email with a scan of something. It didn't match our records. We froze new access and noted your file. I felt the usual drop in my chest, the way a machine sounds different a split second before it jams. Thank you for stopping it," I said. I signed the freeze form she slid over and asked for printed statements and a note on the account. No changes without me at the counter in person. Numbers behave when you put them in daylight. At Alvarez's office, I left my packet with the receptionist and kept my words short. Here are the notes. Here are the copies of the charges. Here are the dates. I didn't stay to talk it through. I didn't need pep talks or predictions. I needed a paper trail that didn't rely on my memory alone. Walking out, I realized how different this birthday felt from the rest. Instead of cake, I brought evidence. Instead of wishes, I brought instructions. At the county building, I ran into Gavin in the lobby. He wore a jacket he saves for performances and a grin meant for strangers. The agent from my porch was with him, and Nate, the man with the laser, stood behind them like a barn cat who'd found a warm vent. "Mark," Gavin said, loud enough to bounce off the tile. "Small world. We're just looking at property cards?" I said. He showed teeth. "Doing due diligence. You should be grateful. We're trying to maximize," he said. "Maximize like a promise." I thought of my wife at the kitchen table after Lydia was born, circling the cheapest brand of formula in a flyer and saying nothing about the taste. There are people who do more with less. There are people who do less with more and blame the world for the difference. The clerk called my number. I didn't look back. By noon, Lydia texted to say she was bringing Sophie by after school. No question mark, just a time. I set out 2 glasses and moved the sewing box where little hands couldn't bump it. They arrived tight-lipped. Sophie's eyes flicked to the fridge and found her drawing. She relaxed a little. Lydia did not. "Tell him," Lydia said to Sophie, and the way she said it told me everything. I was not a father today. I was an obstacle. "Tell him what you told me." Sophie's voice was small. "Mom says we're moving to a building with an elevator and a pool and a room where you can watch movies anytime. She says it will be easier for you, Grandpa. She says you're tired." I pulled out her chair. "I am tired sometimes," I said, "but I am not moving because someone is tired of looking at my trees." I looked at Lydia. "Do not put her in the middle." "I am trying to prepare her," Lydia snapped. "You're the one making this ugly." "You are choosing land over family. I am choosing a family that acts like one," I said. "A family pays what it owes. A family asks before it shows up with strangers. A family keeps a child out of negotiations." She flushed, then grabbed the back of a chair and squeezed until her knuckles went white. "You will lose me over this," she said. "Is that what you want? To die in this house with your precious ledgers and no one left to speak your name?" It landed. I will not pretend it didn't. But behind her shoulder, Sophie's drawing stared back with its crooked letters. I thought of another kind of silence, the kind that settles when a person trades decency for convenience, and decided I could live with my choice longer than she could live with hers. "You're my daughter," I said. "That will not change, but the way you're acting can." She stood so fast the glass rattled. "Come on," she told Sophie. "We're leaving." Sophie hesitated. "Can I ring the bell once?" she asked, eyes darting to my pocket. Lydia started to say no. I said yes. Sophie rang, a soft sound that reached the porch and stopped there like it knew where it was allowed to go. She hugged me, quick and fierce, then followed her mother out. They were barely down the lane when a van rolled up, a locksmith logo on the side. Gavin hopped out of the passenger seat and waved the driver toward the porch. "We'll get this squared," he said. "Dad can't keep changing locks like a hermit. We need access to get work done." "He does not," I said. "And you do not." Gavin held up a printout. "Power of—" "Put it away," I said. "You know what you have and what you don't." The van door slid open and a younger man stepped out with a toolkit. He looked from Gavin to me and back, weighing who would write the check and who owned the door. "Sir," he asked me, "do you want me here?" "No," I said. Gavin's smile cracked. "You're making this worse than it needs to be." Earl's screen door creaked. He came out with a mug and leaned on his rail like men have since porches were invented. Across the hedgerow, May lifted her phone. Not sneaky, just obvious enough to say, "We are watching, we are writing this down too." "Call it in," I told Earl without looking. He didn't argue. 10 minutes later, Deputy Harlan's cruiser eased to the shoulder. Here is what I noticed while we waited. The locksmith shifted his weight and closed his toolbox. Gavin's fingers trembled just enough to rattle the paper he held. My own breathing was steady. It's a small victory to catch yourself not shaking. You take it. Harlan spoke to each of us, calm and even. "This is his residence," he said at last, nodding at me. "No one changes locks here without his say-so. No more signs in the ditch. No more crews without notice. You have disagreements. Take them where they belong. Not to a driveway Gavin tried to salvage something from the moment." "We're family," he said. "We're working on arrangements." "You can work on them somewhere else," Harlan said. "Step off the porch." They left in a scatter of excuses and future threats. The locksmith gave me a small nod before he climbed in the van. A quiet apology from someone who just wanted to finish a job and go home. When the cruiser pulled away, the quiet felt heavy, not peaceful. I went inside and sat at the table, hands flat on the wood, and took stock. The birthday message hadn't been clumsy. It had been a test. Would I fold at the first hint of ugliness? They had their answer now, and they would escalate. People do not like it when their free hand closes. A text came from an unknown number. "We've filed. You'll hear from someone soon." It did not say what, and it didn't need to. I pictured their plan laid out like a checklist. Say he's confused. Say he's stubborn. Say he is being influenced. Say he will be better off in the unit with the talking elevator and the apples on the counter. I pictured meetings where I was a third-person noun. He, him, the asset, the property. I stood and made coffee, the way you do when there is nothing else to do for 10 minutes but breathe. I thought about legacy again, not as a word you carve into a bench, but as the answer to a simple question. When I am gone, what keeps working because I said no at the right time? A house you never wanted? No. A tree a child drew? Yes. A ledger that tells the truth? Yes. A county clerk who knows your name? Yes. Neighbors who don't look away? Yes. Just before dark, Lydia's car pulled up without headlights. She came alone. She did not knock. She stood on the porch and spoke through the screen. "I'm sorry about the locksmith," she said. Her voice had the scrape of someone who had been crying or shouting. "He shouldn't have done it that way." "He shouldn't have tried at all," I said. She nodded, quick, like she'd rehearsed that part. The next words came out shaking. "We can't pay it all back right now. We're in deep. The deposit is gone. Gavin. He needs this. He says if we don't move fast, we lose everything." I could have said, "You are not losing everything. You are being told to trade something real for something shiny." I could have said, "He needs this because he spent what he did not have and wants to fix it with what is not his." Instead, I said, "You owe what you owe. Pay it as you can. Stop sending people to my house. Stop using Sophie as a messenger. Bring me a plan that has her at the center and your husband out of the driver's seat." She flinched. "If I do, you'll—" "What? Forgive us? Forget it happened?" "No. I will trust you enough to keep your word the next time. That's what grown people do when they are trying to fix things." She looked past me into the kitchen. Her eyes caught on the sewing box, the ledgers, the plates I had not put away since lunch. "You're going to fight me," she said, half a question, half a realization. "I'm going to fight for you," I said. "That is what you are not understanding." She pressed her lips together and nodded once, like a person counting to keep from breaking. "You always make me feel 10 again," she said, "like I'm in trouble." "You are not in trouble," I said. "You are making choices. Some of them are bad. You can change them." She wiped her face with the back of her hand and left without another word. When the taillights disappeared, I wrote the day in the notebook with more care than usual. Bank, county, parking lot, lunch with Sophie, locksmith, deputy, porch talk. I filled the line at the bottom, the one where I write what matters most in plain words. They are going to try to make me the problem. I am going to be the boundary. They tried to force the pace. The main confrontation was close, and you wouldn't believe how far I was willing to take it. Saturday, 2 SUVs and a van nosed up my lane like they owned the gravel. Movers in matching shirts hopped out and started for the porch with folded boxes. A realtor set a collapsible sign at the step and clipped a smile to her face. Gavin strode ahead, one hand in the air like a man hailing his own parade. Lydia trailed behind, jaw set, eyes not meeting mine. I did not argue. I pointed. Deputy Harlan's cruiser rolled in behind them, quiet as a closing drawer. He stepped out, said 10 words that mattered. Private residence. Owner says no. Pack up. Leave. Now. And that was the end of the open house boxes folded the other way. The sign came down. The smiles clipped off. Quick in, quicker out. Practical, clean. Childish, Gavin muttered as he brushed past me. I wrote the time in my notebook and didn't bother to answer. Monday was the room downtown. No drama. A door, a clock, chairs that make you sit up straight. A woman with a clipboard said our names. A man at the front asked 3 questions that would fit on a receipt. I answered them the way a machine answers when it is running right. Steady, no rattle. I showed what I needed to show and nothing more. It took less time than a haircut. We walked out with their arrangements dropped and my day unchanged. On the steps, Gavin was already on the phone, talking fast to someone who wasn't going to be as patient as I had been. Lydia stood to the side like a person watching her own shadow. When she saw me, she squared up as if courage could be assembled on the spot. "Dad," she said, voice low and urgent, "we can fix this if you help us right now. We're on the hook for the deposit. Gavin's accounts are tangled. The school wants the next tuition installment. If you could just—" I remembered the numbers that kept my house warm on their cold days. $7,400, $11,200, $2,100, $8,000. I remembered the $6,000 someone spent with my name and someone else's address. I remembered the birthday message that was supposed to shrink me. I kept my voice even. "Don't expect money." She blinked like I'd slapped her with air. The words took a second to land, then hit everything at once. Her plan, her schedule, the story she'd been telling herself. She looked past me at the street, then back, color gone from her cheeks. "You don't mean that," she said, but there wasn't much conviction left to prop it up. "I mean this. Don't expect money," I said. "No more deposits with my future. No more buyers in my kitchen. No more using a child to carry adult trouble. You want to fix it? Bring me a plan that starts with paying back what you owe and keeping Sophie out of the middle." Anything else? No. Gavin cut off his call and came over hot. "You're crucifying us for being ambitious," he said. "You're vindictive." "I'm consistent," I said. "That's new to you, so it feels like punishment." He tried the old tricks. Volume, posture, jargon. But there was no room left to sell me anything. People streamed around us, eyes forward. No audience for his show. In the glass door beside us, I caught my reflection. An older man in a clean shirt who had decided to stop apologizing for drawing a line. Lydia swallowed and tried once more, softer. "Dad? What do I tell Sophie?" "Tell her the truth," I said. "Tell her the big tree stays. Tell her Grandpa kept his word, and tell her you're going to keep yours." I turned and took the steps down, one at a time, the way you do when you've got more to protect than hurry. Behind me, voices rose, then fell. Out at the curb, I could see the top of a maple, and beyond it, the suggestion of Rose. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished with one part and ready for the next. At home, The porch was quiet. No signs in the ditch. No cars idling. I put the kettle on and set Sophie's drawing back under its magnet, pressing once so it held flat. Then I opened my notebook and wrote the afternoon plain. They asked. I answered. I'm not a wallet, I'm a boundary. And because the day had earned it, I gave myself one more line, small and exact. The orchard is not for sale. Neither am I. The sign went into the ground on a clear morning, a small post at the edge of the lane that read what I had been saying out loud. Protected land, no subdivision. Earl whistled low. May brought over a pie for paperwork, she said. I took a photo for my notebook and for the first time in months let my shoulders drop. Sophie came after school with her backpack thumping and her braid crooked. Can we make cider? She asked. We cranked the press on the porch until the bucket foamed. She tasted first, eyes closing like she was memorizing it. This is how fall tastes, she said, and I believed her. Lydia walked up the steps slower than usual, no schedule, no entourage, just an envelope and a look I remembered from when she was 10, and telling the truth cost something. She set the envelope on the table. It is a start, she said. I will bring more each month. I stopped the listings. No more visits without asking, no more signs, no more using Sophie. She swallowed. I am sorry. I did not ask for money, I said. I know, she answered. I owed it anyway. She stood there for a beat, then added, quiet. He is not coming back with me. She did not say Gavin's name, and I did not ask for it. We ate roast and carrots at the same table where we fought. No speeches. Sophie rang the bell once and grinned. When they left, Lydia hugged me like a person who had set down a heavy box and finally had both arms free. The days found a rhythm I could trust. I walked the rows and made notes for pruning. I taught Sophie to splice a graft and label it. She made neat tags in block letters and called each tree by name. On Saturdays we sold a few baskets by the road and passed the rest to the church pantry. On Sundays the fourth pew dipped the way it always had, and Pastor Green shook my hand hard enough to mean it. In the shed, the notebook changed. Fewer entries about plates and signs, more about weather and yields, and the jar where Sophie keeps $3 for every basket she helps fill. At the back I taped her drawing, ladder, apples, the big tree, and wrote one last line where I could not miss it in the mornings. Keep your word. I won at their game by refusing to play it. The house is mine. The orchard is ours. Lydia is paying what she owes and acting like my daughter again. Sophie can find the bell in the dark without looking. If that is not a happy ending, it is at least the right one. The big tree stays. So do we. Protecting the big tree meant protecting my legacy. But was that justice or stubbornness? Tell your judgment in the comments below.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.